during that summertime, my wonderful friend, Pete Canadian Sykes Gray, that we were talking about this morning, she said, Eva Nell, I'm going to get you a job at Brown so that you can go to Howard Payne College. So she did. She got me a job at the First Baptist Church at Brownwood in the office as part-time secretary. And so, and then she got me enrolled at Howard Payne. So, you know, she was such a wonderful friend to all of us. Even though she wasn't our teacher, she was our friend. And so I put all my belongings in this little tiny Fort Locker that, you know, we got when we graduated from Buckner, and got on the bus and went out to Brownwood, Texas. Started 4 wonderful years of college. I love those 4 years. They were just wonderful years of working and studying. And you know, it was just a wonderful experience. And during the first year of college, we had chapel. I can't remember if every day in Jerry or something at Howard Payne. But one of those chapel meetings, we had a speaker from Africa. And his name was Quincy Harper. You've heard of him. He was missionary to Africa. And he just, you know, he really pressed on our hearts the need for people to go all over the world to talk about Christ as their Savior. And the Lord had done work in my life, and I felt like, you know, maybe He wants me, but I thought, how can He use somebody like me, you know? I don't want how to be a missionary. But I told the Lord that that's what you want me to do. That's certainly what I want to do. And by the end of that year, I felt certain that He wanted me to do more mission work. So I graduated from Howard Payne during the summers. I worked in vacation Bible schools around the state of Texas through the Baptist General Convention of Texas. And then enrolled in Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, trying to fulfill the qualifications with the Southern Baptist as a missionary. And during those first days there, I met a lot of men, a lot of boys that were, you know, these ministers who always look good life. But I met Jim Kimler, and he had graduated from Baylor University with several fine majors. One of them Spanish. He already spoke Spanish fluently, and majored in biology and Bible, and came to Southwestern, and he was working on divinity degree and also a master's degree in education. I worked on this master's degree in business education. I earned my BS degree at Howard Payne. And so we met, and we fell in love that year, and he had also been called to missions to work as a missionary. While he was in Japan, he worked with the General Headquarters, MacArthur's headquarters, in the occupation right after World War II. And he taught Bible in a Christian school to Japanese students. He taught through an interpreter. He was just 18 years old, you know, and he had a Japanese interpreter. And so the Lord used that to lay on his heart the need to preach the gospel all over the world. Well, we were married on May 28th, 1955, and continued there in the seminary for another year. But one of the things, just before we married, he said, I want you to go out to West Texas with me to meet these Spanish-speaking people. He was pastoring Spanish-speaking churches, missions. And he said, I want you to go out and meet these people that I work with. And I said, hey, I don't speak a word of Spanish. And he said, well, when they speak Spanish to you, you just smile and say, see. And that's exactly what I did. You know, I smiled and said, see. Of course, they thought I understood everything they were saying. But one of the interesting things is Neil Lyman's parents, his dad worked as a minister of music and education in the church where the mission was the mother church. And so we knew Neil as he was a little tiny boy, you know, running around falling in the cactus or something. And so, you know, all these years later, it's so neat to meet Neil here. But anyway, after Jean and I married, we graduated from Southwestern Seminary, moved down to Ranger, Texas, and went to these Spanish-speaking churches. And then the Calvary Baptist Church, which was an English-speaking church, called him as pastor in Breckenridge, Texas. So we moved to Breckenridge, Texas, and during that time we were working with the Foreign Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention, wanting to be appointed as missionaries, as foreign missionaries. We weren't real certain at that time where we would go, because I had felt called to Africa course, he felt inclined to Japan. He worked there in Japan. But as we worked with foreign mission boards to Ambassador Convention, they said that the greatest need in the world right now is in South America and Venezuela. And so we said, okay, that's where we want to go, the neediest part of the world. And so we were appointed on May 8, 1958 to work as missionaries to Venezuela. But the first thing we had to do, we went to Spanish language school in San Jose, Costa Rica, so that I could learn to speak Spanish. And so we studied hard. I studied hard all that year while my husband taught in the seminary. He already spoke Spanish fluently and knew it. So that was a very hard year because while we were in Breckenridge, our first two children were born, David Eugene and Mary Faith. So we went to Costa Rica with two real small children. After that year, we came back to Texas and packed up our belongings, got on a train, rode train to New York, and got on a big ship and sailed to Venezuela. And we started a missionary career in Caracas, which is the capital city. And our job was evangelism and starting new churches. So we started, of course, all the Spanish-speaking Americans in Brazil speak Spanish. And so all of our work was in Spanish, was mainly in Spanish. So we started a church called the Emmanuel Baptist Church in Caracas. And soon well, at that time when we went to Venezuela, there was a large English language, large group of people, the English-speaking people who worked there with an oil company and we worked with the American Embassy. And so we had an English-speaking Baptist church there already organized in Caracas. So we became without a pastor. We really had a shortage of missionaries and pastors. So my husband was asked to that church also. So we, every Sunday morning, we'd run over to the English language church and he'd preach in English and sing in English, and then we'd go back to the Spanish-speaking church right after that and speak in Spanish. And so every time we get in the car, our children would say, "Are we going to speak English or Spanish?" We were all changing. So in Caracas, we had two more children, Elizabeth Ann and Eva Kimler, that you just heard sing. And so one of the highlights of our being in Caracas, Venezuela, was we had a Billy Graham campaign held in the great big bull ring there in Caracas. It held 1,000 people. During that time, my husband was Billy Graham's chauffeur. So Saturday night, he brought Billy Graham plus his team over to our house. We had invited the English language Baptist church, the people, to come and meet him. And so that was a real highlight of our work in Venezuela. After a few years in Caracas, we began moving out to other cities to start churches where there had never been one. And now some people, think that when you start churches, you're making a building. But we were telling the people about the Lord, and when they were converted, we would disciple them, and this would be the nucleus of the church, because the church are people. And sometimes we did lead in building buildings, but it was mainly developing a church group that we could organize into a church. And after 3 or 4 years in one place, and we were ready to organize that group into a church, we would call a Venezuelan pastor to come and pastor that congregation. Then we'd move on to another city. So during our 40 years plus there in Venezuela, we worked in 7 different states of Venezuela, in the capital cities, which were large cities, where there had never been any Baptists where people had no idea who Baptists were, and until we got there and told them. And we lived in 8 cities and worked on those areas. And after 40 years of missionary service, we retired and came back to Florida, Texas, and we started the Spanish church in the First Baptist Church in Florida, so it is part of the First Baptist Church in Florida. So we actually retired, but we just got retreated, in Florida, and we worked with that congregation, Spanish congregation that we started there in Florida for 6 years, and then we called the Hispanic pastors of that church. Then my husband was asked to pastor a small group of Hispanics in Crandall, Texas. So we began to go to Crandall, Texas. And we did that until his health became bad and he couldn't preach anymore. And So Lord, has blessed us so much, and we were blessed through our 4 children, wonderful children. Lord put into our family, and 13 grandchildren. Our children, we have 2 sons and 2 daughters. Our 3 older children are missionaries in various areas. We have a daughter in Russia with her family, a daughter in Mexico with his family. Our oldest son wasn't Venezuela with his family. He's back in Springville, Arkansas, right now. Nathan, our youngest son, lives in Greenville, Texas. He loves to sing, like gospel music, and he's an artist, and he's a photographer, and has many talents. So I just praise the Lord, that He's led me all these years. And one of my favorite verses in the Bible is Philippians 4:13. Because through these years, I have done so many things that I never thought I could do. And so I just leaned on this verse. I can do all